Hello there, Commonwealth Rhoam here, and here is a bold statement. Ave Rhoam, as the Kingdom of Hyrule is Rome, at least in Breath of the Wild, and throughout this Zelda Theory I will detail why. So let's get it right out of the way to not waste any time. Aim 3,500 likes, and please subscribe with bell on to bring us past 300,000 subscribers before the launch of Skyward Sword HD, and by doing so unlock plus qualify for our Switch Pro or Switch Plus games with $400 giveaway. Rome, the eternal city where rulers were literal gods of the known world, the center of the ancient world for over 500 years, where all roads led to and where the empire grew and expanded from. Then you have Hyrule, what used to be an eternal divine kingdom, and Castletown, where its royal blood is descended directly from goddess Hylia, the eternal land of the Hylians, and from where it, from its central core, expanded throughout the land. Both eventually fell despite supposed to be eternal, and in the case of both, only ruins and singular monuments remain of its former greatness. Though there's far more to it, as the Zelda team had Rome in mind when making Breath of the Wild, since the connections between the Roman Empire and the Kingdom of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild are hidden within the ruins, clothing, the banner of the kingdom, history, and most of all, the deceased king's name. King Rhoam Bosphorus Hyrule, a rather complex and peculiar name compared to the past Gustav, Daltus, and Daphnis Nohansen. Rhoam Bosphorus. Well, the two names are a direct reference, or if you prefer, connection to the ancient Roman Empire, or more specifically, its western and eastern capitals, during and after the reign of Emperor Constantine the Great. Rome is obviously an abbreviation of Rome, Latin capital of the Western Roman Empire. They are even pronounced exactly the same way in English, as demonstrated during the Great Revelation.
I was King Rhoam Bosphorus Hyrule. I was the last leader of Hyrule, a kingdom which no longer exists.
The second name, Bosphorus, on the other hand, is more unclear until you realize that the name of the city that the Zelda team are referencing to is laid on what? The Bosphorus Strait. Same pronunciation and everything, only where AM is added in between the Bosphor and us. It is just that today, the city that the Zelda team wanted to reference to is called Istanbul, the largest city in Turkey, or was called Constantinople when it was the largest city in the world and the capital of the Greek Orthodox Christian Eastern Roman, or if you prefer, Byzantine Empire, until its fall to the Muslim Ottoman Empire in 1453. In other words, the Zelda team avoided a Muslim Christian and Turkish-Greek controversy by referencing neither Istanbul nor Constantinople. Instead, they went for the Bosphorus Strait that divides two continents, Europe and Asia, and connects two seas, the Mediterranean through the Aegean and the Black Sea. Though I have to say that King Rhoam, Constantine Hyrule, would also sound great, but it is understandable that the Zelda team wanted to avoid another Zelda Islam controversy after the religious chanting in the Fire Temple theme and the original Crescent Moon and Star Gerudo Crest in the Nintendo 64 versions of Ocarina of Time, the state religion and symbol of the Ottoman Empire and modern-day Turkey. The more you know. And no, it is not only like this in the English localization, as King Rhoam Bosphorus Hyrule is nothing else but Rhoam Bosphorus Hyrule in the original Japanese version of the game. So no ancient Rome fanboy trickery from the English translation team here, but rather intention from the Zelda team, as there are far more connections, or if you prefer, references to the Roman empires and their conflicts with outsiders. And it all ties to the previously mentioned vexillology, where surprisingly in Breath of the Wild, the Imperial or Royal Red dominates the traditional Hylia Blue, a very likely reference to Rome's famous Imperial Vexilloids, which makes so much sense when we take into account King Rhoam's name's true meaning. Then we have the ruins and lore found in Breath of the Wild. But what ruins in Era of the Wild Hyrule do I think that the name Rhoam Bosphorus alludes to? Well, it has been mixed a little bit geographically compared to our own world, but the two capital connections are definitely there, with the Great Plateau and the Temple of Time serving as the birthplace of the Kingdom of Hyrule as detailed by King Rhoam as the Old Man, and its first royal castle and capital. This one eventually fell by the hands of Ganondorf in all three timeline branches, only leaving the Temple of Time to rot. The Great Plateau symbolizes ancient Rome, a town that eventually ended up being sacked and destroyed. In Zelda, by Ganondorf. In our own world, by Barbarians. Then afterwards, in the timeline of Breath of the Wild, after the regular Zelda timeline, it became nothing more than a religious capital, with the rebuilt Temple of Time and the temples of Din, Nehru and Furor beneath it. And finally, the Eastern Abbey on its eastern edge, all religious sites and visited by Hylian pilgrims from across the land. And what was Rome for 1000 years after its many falls in the 400s, 500s and 700s Anno Domini? The capital of the Papal States before the Italian conquest in 1870, and to this day the Roman Catholic Church in the Vatican. The grave of King Rhoam on top of Mount Hylia is another indication of this, the death of Rome and, well, Rome. Plenty of symbolism and historic undertone hidden in certain specific locations and objects. But what else is Rome known for apart from the Vatican and St. Peter's Basilica, the greatest remnant from the Roman Empire? The mighty Colosseum. What is located right next to the Great Plateau? The Colosseum Ruins. And when it is told in game that it was an arena for combat, there is no doubt that some inspiration was taken from the greatest landmark, an arena of ancient Rome, which is still standing. In other words, the Great Plateau and its nearby Colosseum is Rome. I mean Rome. Funny enough, it isn't even the first Colosseum in the Zelda series, as we already had the Arbiter's Grounds in Twilight Princess, which looked like, well, this. Now what is Bosphorus? I mean Bosphorus in Hyrule, the new Hyrule castle town equivalent to our own world's new Rome or Constantinople. There are a number of indications of this. First and foremost, the move of the capital from its original location in both cases. Second, Hyrule Castle Town being surrounded by giant Roman aqueducts leading fresh water into the city. 3. Both being a crucial center of worship, though where in one case this center is still standing, while in the other it has been leveled after the Great Calamity. Naturally, the two being the Hagia Sophia and the other Hyrule Cathedral. I guess that one key landmark had to remain of each city, Hyrule Castle in Breath of the Wild and the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. Once again, the Zelda team mixes their source of inspiration to their liking. If you want to go even further, you could also bring up the walls of Hyrule Castle Town and Constantinople, and the fall of both. Zelda team, I see what you did there. Fall of Rome and fall of Constantinople, and I guess the fall of the two castle towns, and the two calamities, with the final one destroying the kingdom completely. Much like the fall of Constantinople's walls in 1453 meant the end for the Roman Empire. Okay Conrad, but what about the architecture of Hyrule, which doesn't look Roman at all? Well, that is where the third Rome, the Holy Roman Empire, comes in. It has for long been speculated which country that has inspired Hyrule, and well, it seems that the Holy Roman Empire is a likely candidate based on architecture, well before it turned into this fragmented mess, but then again, that is also what Hyrule is kind of right now. Rome Bosphorus Hyrule, symbolizing the original Western, continued Eastern, and perhaps even the messed up Northern, or more precisely, pretender Rome. But even then, there is more to this puzzle, a mixing of all three Roman empires in Hyrule, namely the eternal enemy of both Western and Eastern Rome, the Barbarians, who would eventually found the Holy Roman Empire, hated and fought against by the Romans and likely also Hylians, only different kinds. The Romans fighting Germanic barbarians, and the Hylians, well, Farron barbarians, or if you prefer the Zonai, hence the barbarian set, the barbarian helm, armor, and leg wraps. Once used by courageous but primitive forest-dwelling warrior people. Sounds familiar. At least they didn't sack Rome, like the Germanic barbarians did in our own timeline. And that's another thing, the fall of Rome. Since the collapse of the empire also symbolized the fall of civilized society in Western Europe and regression to the Dark Ages. In Hyrule, we see how devastating the calamity was for the civilization of the Hylians, as 100 years later, Hyrule Castletown remains occupied by guardians and in ruins. Only one brick-based Hylian settlement, Hateno, stands firm in an otherwise sea of ruins. The more you think of it, the fall of the Western Roman and Hylian civilizations, in terms of ruins, is very, and I mean very similar. Both had defenses meant to protect from outer, northern, southern and eastern enemies, but were eventually destroyed by an enemy that was already within their borders, leaving only a few landmarks reminding of the former might and glory of these lost worlds. The rest are ruins and traces of former activity, For Hyrule and the Hylians, the collapse and destruction of the kingdom due to the Great Calamity was the greatest catastrophe in the history of the divine race. A likely 90% population decrease, the end of urban life outside of Hateno, and what's worse, the loss of all kinds of specialists in the process, ranging from organized urban administration and leadership, military command and forces, to even stone and brick masons, which made construction of traditional Hylian buildings impossible. Literally, what remains of the Hylian civilization in the era of the Wild is its currency, clothing, weaponry, some armor, and some of its trade network, thanks to the roads and bridges which survived the calamity, and the new stables which take advantage of these former trade routes. At the same time, new buildings are exclusively built from wood, and no one is able to recreate, rebuild, or even repair the brick and concrete domes and chambers of Hyrule Castle, the broken stone walls of Fort Hateno, or even build new brick homes in Hateno Village. Likewise, the fall of the Western Roman Empire, its armies and administration is seen as the greatest tragedy for the development of humanity in the Western world, as it would take well over 1000 years in Western Europe to get out of the Dark Ages and back to the civilized urban and provincial living standards found in ancient Greece and Rome. The literacy rate in the former empire dropped from 10% to under 1%. The hygiene fell to rock bottom with the destruction of the Roman baths and Roman plumbing systems across Western Europe. This stood in contrast to the east, where Emperor Justinian the Great with his genius general Belisarius had a little over 900 years prior attempted to restore the light to the fallen half of the empire and take it out from the Dark Ages, less than 100 years after entering it, succeeding in reclaiming northwestern Africa, the Western Balkans, southern Spain, and the biggest prize Italy with the Eternal City, Rome. Which brings me to the words of Princess Zelda after her liberation 100 years after the fall of her and King Rhoam's kingdom.
I believe in my heart that if all of us work together, we can restore Hyrule to its former glory. Perhaps even beyond, but it all must start with us. Let's be off.
Justinian and his general Belisarius looked west to bring back Rome and its western provinces to the Roman Empire. The same way, Zelda and her knight and hero Link looked towards Hyrule Castle and believed in the restoration and return of the Kingdom of Hyrule to central Hyrule. Ultimately, Eastern Rome was unable to hold the reconquered West and became a Greek-speaking Orthodox empire, resulting in a greater and greater Greek East, Latin West divide in Europe in the centuries to follow, until a great schism separated the last institution connecting the two, the Christian Church. Which brings me to the Sheikah Schism of Kakariko and Yiga, which the Zelda team might also have been inspired by this very Roman event. The Western Latin Roman Catholic Church and their support to the Holy Roman Empire against the Eastern Greek Orthodox Church and the Roman Empire in the East, both claiming to be the rightful Rome and Christian Church. You also have the Latin and Greek, or if you prefer combined Roman names from Age of Calamity tied to art, religion and sciences. So for the rest of this video, spoiler warning. I will give you 5 seconds, beginning from now, to click away. Beginning with the egg guardian, Terraco, which is an altered form of terracotta, or the Latin terracotta, meaning baked earth. And in Roman times, terracotta vessels were used to collect water home from previously mentioned aqueducts. Naturally, the Zelda team were looking for a fitting name to the Japanese mid to late Jomon-inspired ancient Sheikah ceramic design went for the name of the ancient Roman clay-based and unglazed ceramics. It makes even more sense when we take into consideration that the tradition of terracotta dates back to the first Roman kingdom, as we have preserved Latin terracotta plaques found in Rome's Forum Romanum dating back to the 6th century BC, so over 2600 years ago. Finally, we have Astor, the prophet of doom, which by adding a P becomes the Latin and religious pastor, meaning shepherd, or if we rearrange the last 2 letters of Astor, we get Astra, meaning otherworldly space in Greek. And the stars within these tie to Greek astrology, aka zodiac signs like the ones found across all ancient Sheikah structures and the Astral Observatory where we fought Calamity Ganon in Breath of the Wild. Anyway, I think that is enough about Rome, and Breath of the Wild for one video. But what do you think of all of this? Sound off in the comment section down below about Rome and Hyrule, fancy Vixilims, Latin, and all that stuff. Plus, be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press that notification bell to qualify for the 300k subscriber giveaway and help us surpass the goal by this date. Finally, a big thanks for financing these videos goes to our patreon.com/commonrealm patrons, and in particular our roller producer Charles Shash. And all of you, please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.